When I was a child, my father was completely disabled with rheumatoid arthritis, like so crippled that he couldn't move, walk, anything. And that was after a very stressful event. And over the course of my entire childhood, he recovered from that completely disabled state to more functional. But the way that he was able to manage it was managing his stress, managing his diet, like being very particular about eating this and not that, being very particular about having a certain amount of activity, being very particular about understanding the impact of stress in his life. And that was something that was, I'm 9, 10 years old, taking in these lessons, and also knowing that it was hereditary to have rheumatoid arthritis or lupus from his side of the family. And for me, it was super important to find something that could help me mitigate or postpone that type of event in my life. And so that was why I decided to, I didn't eat refined sugar when I was a kid. Fruit was dessert. I didn't, eat red meat or pork when I was a kid. I mean, there's just lots of habits were established very young. And when I was in college, I was able to kind of explore yoga, in a very rudimentary way. When I went to my first class, I realized that I had been doing it like naturally as a kid, as a child athlete, and spending hours just sitting and stretching and moving and having a lot of kind of, interoceptive development that I was doing on my own. And so I realized that I was doing yoga and it had already been a part of.
Hello, good morning, and thank you for joining me. My name is Claudette Estherine Campbell, and I am the president and chair, a sleepy Claudette Estherine Campbell, and I am the president and chairperson of the Daughters of Sheba Foundation. The Daughters of Sheba Foundation is a 4-year-old Canadian nonprofit organization, and we are completely dedicated to women and women's concern. We are, some would say, feminist. I would say women empowerment. I would say women-centric, women-focused organization. And this morning, we are having our Saturday morning conversation. And usually I have one of my companions, my co-directors, one of my amigos here with me, whether it's Clara, Colleen, or Gloria. But this morning, I have a very special guest to talk with us about how to be strong mentally and emotionally. And I could not have chosen better, because this woman is not only strong mentally, she's strong physically. She's a army person, totally far from my experience, nothing I've ever experienced and never desired to be. But I had the opportunity recently of first watching a video of one of her sessions, and two, participated. Well, let me not lie, I didn't really participate. I watched again while I was trying to get my grandkids ready for work, so for school. So without any further ado, let me welcome my guest. Listen, I don't like when people mess up my name, so that's why I tend to say, just call me Det. So Adhana,
Adhana.
Adhana. You see, I knew it. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a funny story about my name. So
Let's hear it. We love jokes.
My father named me, and he named me from a list of African names when I was, late 70s. That's how life was. And he saw a bunch of Swahili names, and he's like, this one I can pronounce and has a good meaning. It means a call to prayer. And for the first 2 years of my life, he called me Adhana, because he wanted to sound super African. He was like, it's Adhana. And then he met somebody who spoke Swahili, and he was like, oh no, it's Adhana. It's just Adhana.
Is there a shortened form for idiots like me?
Uh, Adana, I think most people will say like Madonna without the M, or like Adonis, things like this.
Okay,
These
okay,
are
okay,
nice anchors for people.
okay,
People say, "Oh, your
okay.
name was like a goddess name, like Adonis." I was like, "Okay, fine. That's whatever works."
Well, thank you so much for being here. However I pronounce your name, forgive me. I am so thrilled to have you here so early on us, at least early for me. It's 8:05 where I am.
Yeah,
For you, I think it's 7?
9 9 a.m.
9. Okay, okay, okay. Not so bad. But thank you for being here with me this morning. Like I said, we have a special conversation, asking anyone who is joining us now to just share this live, because this is a very special conversation. All of our conversations are special, but this particular Saturday morning conversation is about how to be strong mentally and physically. I promised I will not get into any of your army secrets. Um, I don't have clearance for that, so I won't get into that. But that clip that I grabbed was from your one of your former employees or current employees?
Yeah, that was one of my former positions as the director of public health for a small army base in Kansas. Um, it was a great opportunity for me to share with the whole entire hospital different things about how to be well. Healthcare providers themselves have a very difficult time maintaining their sense of boundaries and health and whatnot, because they're so busy delivering healthcare and taking care of people who are having the worst days of their lives. So it's really important to care for the caregiver, and that was a part of the series of videos I created for them.
Just as on a side note, my daughter is in the healthcare field, so I watch her going through her own struggles with that. But tell us, I don't want to be the one doing all the talking. Tell us about yourself, a little about yourself. Where were you born? Not where do you live now? Not just the state. Doesn't need, you don't need to give us your street number or anything like that. Kind of what you do, just to set the stage for our
Yeah.
conversation.
Sure. So I currently am a physician assistant in the Army, and I have been in the Army for about 20 years and a PA for about 14 years now. Um, I am originally from Southern California, and it was there that I grew up, went to college, and, like I mentioned in the video, started to learn about yoga as a practice. And after I graduated from college, I went to study. I went and lived abroad for a year in England, came back, and uh, decided to join the Army, which is a very unusual decision for folks in my background. I guess I could say I was, living in a very hippie, very open sort of environment. And so to go from being in that environment to being in the military, it felt externally like a 180. But what I found when I joined was that it was very meaningful for me to develop young leaders. And one of the jobs I had before joining the Army was being a youth development coordinator for at-risk youth and urban youth in Long Beach. And I realized that the military is one of the largest youth development programs in the world, and you actually get a living wage doing the work. It's not like the nonprofit
Okay.
world where you're always struggling for grants and all this stuff to help people. The military, by design, is trying to help the soldiers be better people at the end of the day. And I didn't realize that our values align so well until I joined, and I realized, oh, here I am. I'm in charge of this group of people. I'm teaching them financial literacy. I'm teaching them how to have better conversations, how to own up to the responsibilities of what they say they're going to do, and it really, what I thought was going to be a 3-year contract ended up being a whole career,
Wow.
leading others and helping people be better people.
Well, I see one of them who you have helped making a comment here, Virgie Patterson Newman, and Vibrant Virgie said she just received her Unleashed Empowerment from the Girl Trek Liberation Line. So happy to
Mm.
connect with you. I don't know if you know her personally, but I'm
I
sure you
love
know what
Sister
she's
Virgie.
talking
She's
about.
awesome. She's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that intro. We tend not to go too much longer, over an hour here, so I just want to jump right into our conversation on the specific topic of how to be strong mentally and emotionally, and clearly that's something that you either directly or indirectly do depending on who you're working with. So and our focus is women, as I said, women of any age, but we particularly zoom in with women over 40 because as director, even my daughter, who's a director, she's now over 35. So that's kind of our target audience, women who are over 35, over 40. And, because these women face unique challenges at this time, such as managing a family, career, relationship, health, societal expectations, and which can be the biggest burden. So, they're challenged with their mental and emotional health. And so I just want us to discuss this morning some key tools for navigating these stages of life. So, in your mind, let's just jump right in and talk about mental toughness. What in your mind would be a definition for mental toughness?
Um, I actually study this in an academic sense right now. I'm working on my PhD in public health, but mental toughness is about resilience, and resilience really means the ability to bounce back from things, and that often comes from a reserve of positive uh, orientation towards life, right? So even when people have very difficult circumstances that they've lived through or have overcome, the thing that kind of drives them, that grit that drives them, is that desire to be better, to live better, to have better. And so when somebody is resilient, they're able to understand that something difficult is happening. They typically acknowledge that it's happening instead of running away from it. And then once they acknowledge it, feel the feelings that are associated with it, that's often enough to help people take the next step. And they may not know the full path, but they do know that maybe if I do this step, it's going to work out. And keeping that optimism about the potential of that hope that's coming on as a way to stay emotionally resilient.
You know, resilience, see, is one of the a big topic for us here, and
Mhm.
so and it being a Saturday, we also dub Saturdays here our self-care Saturdays, and sometimes people think that you're soft when you talk about self-care and taking care of your emotional health, and especially men, they tend to say that, oh, you guys are too sensitive and so forth. But I personally find that being mentally and emotionally resilient, it, as you said, it helps you to face life's challenges, but with grace, confidence, and strength. Would you agree with that?
I would. And it's funny, my family and I, we were watching the Alexander Hamilton play last night. And, George Washington's character, um, he commented about how when he first led people into war, he saw everybody get massacred. And that stayed with him, right? That loss stayed with him. And it helped him to be an empathetic leader. It helped him to be the type of leader that, everyone wanted to follow for so long, because he understood loss, and he understood that he needed to keep going, and he kept making steps and steps and steps to progress the mission, and in his case the mission of developing America. But it really was that sense of loss and despondency that he had to bounce back from in order to get to the place where he could be the leader that everyone looked up to. And part of that
Hmm.
was the empathy, the experiencing, and then the resolution of what happened, and then the decision to move forward, and the decision to move forward, understanding that other people are also having difficult times.
I'm not dragging you into any political conversation, and you don't have to comment. This is just a sidebar from me. As you said that, another leader in your country that came to mind is Joe Biden. Much the same is said of him. No comment from you, please. Thank you. don't want you to lose your pension. So, so mental toughness, as we said, is that ability to stay focused, manage your emotions and overcome whatever setbacks that you might be facing. And it's not about being tough, is it, in the traditional sense, but about being mentally flexible and having emotional control. Discuss with me how, as women over 40, with our shifting roles and the hormonal challenges that we have, not me anymore, but the hormonal challenges that women face and other life transition, how do you stay flexible?
I think it's so important that you said it's about being mentally flexible as opposed to being mentally tough. I feel like uh, mentally tough can feel like you're walking around with armor. And then when you're walking around with armor, you don't really feel anything. And I don't think that that's the way that we're designed. We don't have all of these nerve endings in our body and all of these ways to perceive what's going on in our environment, only to block it all off in our lives, right? So the toughness or having armor around us is not the way that I approach resilience. The way that I approach resilience is is through the flexibility that you just talked about. And for me, it's giving grace to myself. It's communicating that I need grace in other situations. It's creating space where I feel like I can operate in a way that's supporting what my nervous system needs at the moment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I, as I wake up and, think about the practice of either breathing practices or yoga practices or different things that can help me kind of get started, I have to acknowledge that that's going to be a part of what I do in order to get ready to go. Or more recently, I've just been practicing music in the morning. I've been playing on the piano to help facilitate some of that healing. That it's almost like the music. Well, the music is therapy. We know that music is a form of therapy, and so just using whatever makes the most sense and is at hand to provide some sort of baseline so that when I go out into the world, I've taken care of myself. I've nourished myself
Mm.
emotionally before going out into the world.
That's so, I love what you said, that last bit, everything, but that last bit, how you encapsulated that by saying you take care of yourself before you go out into the world. Because as mothers, grandmothers, myself, we tend to take care of everybody first. So you get up, you make everybody's breakfast, you make sure they get ready for school, lunches are packed, and then you just rush through the door. We need that time, that space, correct?
We need that time and space. And I'm so grateful to have a partner that's really supportive in that. Like he knows that he's better at mornings than I am in terms of getting the kids out the door. And so he just does
Mhm.
it. He just, breakfast is on the table for the kiddo, and either one of us is going to take him to school. But like having that pressure off, where I can take care of myself, I can do the writing that I need to do, I can do the other things I need to do to feed myself before going out there. It matters. And so for those who are partnered, um, making that $1 million request of like, hey, I need space, can you help me with this part, can be a really empowering thing. And if you're not partnered, figuring out what makes the most sense in terms of how you can give yourself that little bit of nurturing before going out and taking care of everyone else.
Awesome. I want to talk about some ways in which we can do that, and we've touched on one, which is basically self care. The hackneyed phrase "self care is not selfish." And so we kind of covered that one, and we touched on just understanding mental toughness and reframing that to more mental flexibility, and part of that for me, an important part of that for me, is this concept that accepting hardship that we come across is part of growth. Talk about embracing challenges as a way to develop that mental flexibility.
Yeah, I think about life as 50-50, right? It's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows, and it's not going to be all bad. But 50-50 is probably a reasonable expectation. And when it feels like it's more than 50% good, then that's gravy, right? And so like setting the expectations, knowing that everything is not going to be perfect, but accepting that and allowing that to be also um, is a way to have this concept. We call it in yoga, we call it santosha. It really means contentment.
Okay.
Contentment. Um, and contentment, I spent probably a decade, with exploring the concept of santosha, knowing that I also want to grow in my life. I always
How
want
do you
things to
spell that,
change.
Santosha?
Santosha.
Okay. And where is it from? What language?
It's in Sanskrit.
Sanskrit. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the basic principles of yoga. The
Okay.
yamas and niyamas are like the fundamental principles of
I didn't
yoga.
stay in the class long enough Wednesday.
That's okay. I didn't talk about it last week, but
Okay.
but nevertheless, Santosha is this idea of contentment. And I was always like, how can I be content with what I have and grow at the same time? Like, how is that a thing? Because you have to be driven to get somewhere.
Exactly.
And what I realized was that the part of how we grow is that natural curiosity, like that natural human inclination for growth. It's not growth because I'm lacking. It's growth because I just desire to be in the world. This is just how I'm interacting with the world. And um, that foundation of gratitude or contentment of like everything is okay, I'm okay, you're okay, we're all okay. Like that foundation is the foundation for growth and change.
What would be your response to someone who says to you, that's Pollyanna thinking? That
Uh,
I'm okay, you're okay, everything's okay.
yeah, because there's a lot of things that are not okay in the world right now,
Right.
right? Um, it, I think the things that are under our control, we have to allow those things to be under our control. And if we feel like there is a disturbance in our soul because of what's going on in the world, then that's our call to go do that thing to help shape that situation. And if it's within our hands, it's our call to do that. And if we feel like torn because we have a whole life and we can't give up that life to go help in a more deliberate in-person sort of way, well then we need to connect to those communities that will also help alleviate suffering in the world. I think that is a part of our human condition, is to understand that suffering exists and to, if we can alleviate it, like take action too. And that is also part of being in the flow. We can't help every last person on the planet, but we can help
Help
ourselves, help
one.
our immediate communities, and in concentric circles really make an influence on the world.
And it's about, if I may add, it's about being vulnerable, isn't it? Isn't that one way of developing that flexibility? Allowing yourself to be vulnerable, being honest with yourself and others about that helps to strengthen you as a person, as a human being. Just allowing yourself to feel.
Yes, that's why we're not tanks, right? My husband does. He does tanks, but I do fixing people. Uh, but yeah, vulnerability. In my experience, both personally and in working with people, vulnerability is like the key that unlocks the next step. Because oftentimes people are running away from being vulnerable. They're running
Mhm.
away from feeling a certain thing, and it's only when they sit and feel the feeling, let that feeling wash over them, however bad it might feel. Oftentimes it's temporary, it's momentary. A lot of times it's just momentary. For some people it lasts longer, people that have more extensive conditions. But when you allow the feelings to be present and you acknowledge them, a lot of times that's all they're asking for, is just for the acknowledgement, and
Yeah.
then they can move on. Just like when a child is having a temper tantrum or a dog is barking at the mailman, like you have to acknowledge and say, "Hey, I see that you are concerned about this man walking in front of our house. Okay, thank you for doing that. Now it's time to come do something else, right? Or the kid having the temper tantrum. I know you wanted that piece of candy. I appreciate that, um, but we're going to redirect to something else. And
Mhm.
so having that ability to acknowledge feelings as they come up and allow them to be, and then redirect to where you want to put your energy and your attention is so powerful.
Do you work with both men and women
I do.
on the question of vulnerability? Are I think women might be more open to being vulnerable, or is that a misconception?
Context matters. Context is
Okay.
king, which
Tell,
is
tell, tell us about the context that or contexts that you have seen men being vulnerable, or no, let me rephrase that. How can we as women encourage men to be more vulnerable with us as a part of emotional resilience?
I think one thing that we overlook is that men, if they're in a space where they're with other men who are vulnerable, that also is a key to unlock that vulnerability. Sometimes it's not just us saying, talk to me, let me know what's going on. Like that is not how they're going to
That's gonna
become
do it.
vulnerable, right? The relationship has to come first, and the relationship of this is how we interact and this is how we connect is really how we get started with that.
I've worked with, because I worked in a correctional system, and I've worked with men and as a group and on one-on-one, and I found them to be quite vulnerable. And it's not simply because they were in that situation, but it seems as if being one with other men too also allows them to get in touch with their feelings and are able to communicate with you if you're willing to hold the space.
Right.
All right. So what about rest and resetting? Is that important to build your emotional resilience, or should you just keep going and toughen yourself up?
That's a rhetorical question, Claudette.
Come on, give me
So you're funny. Is rest necessary? 100%. Right. We know that when we study
I
people who
don't
are sleep.
sleep really, so that's why I'm asking.
Well, there are seasons in life, right? So when we talk about Ayurvedic cycles, which is the sister science of yoga, there's like the Vata era of life, which is usually like the over 60-ish and beyond. And that feels like a very ethereal time where less sleep is required and less, like there's that's a part of a natural cycle.
Can you please repeat that for Colleen to hear? I know she's watching and she keeps nagging me about my inability to sleep for over a certain amount of hours and the fact that I can operate on 2 hours of sleep for the next 22 hours. You know, get her off
So
my back, please.
yeah, so in certain areas of life,
Oh,
um,
baby.
there you go, babe. In certain stages of life, uh, especially in like the over 60 age group, Ayurvedically, we talk about the Vata area of life, which is a very ethereal space in which people are operating in, no matter male or female. But that Vata phase of life is one where people, you know, they feel a little bit lighter, they feel a little less connected to the ground, they feel um, like they don't need as much sleep, they don't need as much food. It's just the predominant element that we talk about with Vata is air. And so using that analogy versus Pitta, which is like the 20, 30 years before that, like 30 to 60. And that is really fire, like just really getting the fire going and, you know, doing the work of your life is the predominant energy. And then before 30, usually before 18 is like this kapha where you're like connected to groundedness. So the predominant energy is earth energy. And so when you are in that kapha phase of life, a lot of it is just like groundedness and connectedness and trying to figure out like where you are in the world. And so we go through those cycles over the course of our lifetime. We go through those cycles over the course of the day. We go through those cycles over the course of the year, the seasons. So we can talk about those elements and how they show up in life. And lots of different contexts. It's kind of like those little seed pictures where you have like the concentric circles
Mhm.
that all intertwine. When you think about cycles, those cycles can superimpose on each other so much that you find that there is there's so many ways to look at cycles, and allowing yourself to be in the flow of that is important.
So, Colleen, please get off my butt. I'm in my
Is that your daughter?
No, one of our she's our admin here at the Daughters of Sheba Foundation, and she's always on my butt. No. Okay, so what before we move on, one more thing that I came across is saying that we build our emotional or mental, you don't like the word toughness, but I'm just going to use it now, mental toughness, by being able to look at the long term, stop the short term thinking. If we look more at the long term, focus more on the bigger picture, it will help us to overcome our short term discomfort. I mean, is that true?
What you're talking about is the growth mindset, right?
Okay.
To know that if something is happening and something happens that we don't like, that it's not the end of the world. One failure does not mean a failure at life. One failure means we have to try again and again and again and again. And understanding that sometimes we underestimate how much we can get done in a day, and overestimate how much we get done in a day, and underestimate how much we can get done in a year, right? So if we can allow ourselves to have longer timelines for the things that we're trying to accomplish, we'll find that we have more grace and ability to get that thing done by spreading the timeline out. Like, instead of, like, I just launched a membership this morning or a couple days ago. Like, I launched a membership and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do all this stuff right now. And I was like, wait a minute, I can build some things as we go along. Like, I can insert some videos, I can provide some links, I can provide some things. And everybody is not ready to consume everything that I have to offer all at once. What they want to do is, go in, check things out, maybe check out a video or two, and then keep on going. They have a whole
Tell us
other
about the
life.
membership where, so that people
Oh
who
yes,
might be.
ma'am. It's on School.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called the
So
Release to Rise.
so
Because
if they go to school, they look for Release to Rise and they
yeah,
can join. Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Need to plug your stuff. Okay.
Thank you.
We need to plug your stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. No, and we feel the same way. Like I said, we've been doing this for 4 years, and it's largely social media, but we do direct intervention. And,
Mhm.
other people come on, and in 4 months, they have 2 million followers. And we've just recently, now approaching 90K on Facebook. Combined, we are approaching maybe 95K followers combined. And I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that, because even what I found with, when you think short term, you want it now, it becomes overwhelming, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And then once we feel overwhelmed, then the nervous system feels like it needs to stop, right? And then that's when we give up. And that's when we stop doing the thing that we had a passion or
Passion.
a passion for, right? And so we want to allow ourselves the flexibility, coming back to flexibility, the
Yeah.
flexibility to pursue our dreams by taking the steps little by little, right? Um, I have a son, he's 7, and so, like, we watched Frozen, and when everything went bad for one of the main characters, she didn't know what to do. They're like, well, just take the next best step, right? And so, isn't that a beautiful thing to
Yeah.
say, instead of, you know, having the whole kit and caboodle planned out and every step like mapped out, and if you miss one step, you feel like you won't get to the top of Everest. No, you will. You just keep stepping, right?
Keep
Just keep
stepping.
stepping. Yeah.
I mentioned that I worked in the correctional system. I worked with both men and women, and I remember one of the former, I hate calling them inmates, but one of the former residents, she said to me, she was in about 9 years then, and she said to me, I take it a minute at a time, not even a day at a time. Some
Mhm.
days, a day at a time is too much for me, and I've never forgotten that. So,
Mhm.
Denise, if somehow you're watching, I've never forgotten to just stop beating up myself and take it a minute at a time.
That's
So,
powerful.
let's just look, yeah. Let's just look at how some of the benefits of this mental resilience for particularly women over 40. When we have increased resilience, what are some of the benefits you would say to women that this is why I suggest that you do this? Because I never tell people what to do. I suggest to them what to do.
Well, I will say this that when we decide to sleep, and I am guilty of not sleeping sometimes, right? So I'm guilty of just going on a knowing that my energy is such that like I am not going to go to sleep on time. But when I do go to sleep, at 10 or 11 o'clock at night and wake up at 6 or whatever, that like I lose weight. I feel more mentally clear. I feel like that I'm able to make better decisions. I'm able to make better plans. I'm able to stick to the plans, and I'm able to um, make decisions about things that pop up that were unplanned. Right. So as somebody who's a woman over 40, so much of my life is supposed to go a certain way, but most of it is unplanned. Right. So many things are like, oh, well, you have to do this. Oh, this popped up. Oh, here's a phone call. Some disaster just happened. Right. You have to go take care of this thing. And so we're in the sandwich generation where we have the older parents, we have the kids that we're taking care of, we have our careers that we're trying to continue to build and maintain a professional presence. And so, as we're doing all of these things, um, the only thing that we have to work with is our mental, physical, and emotional stamina, right? And it's not stamina because we're enduring, it's stamina because we have perpetual energy. And we have perpetual energy when we allow ourselves to rest, recover, and come back again.
Come back again.
Yep. When we sleep, like our whole brains get doused in cerebral spinal fluid. It's almost like you get a tune up. You get a brain tune up every time you go to sleep at night. And so this is especially if we're in their pitta phase of life in that midlife, um, that's essential because when we don't do that process regularly, those amyloid plaques start to build up. Things that are linked to Alzheimer's and other other diseases of the brain and of the heart. The stress and the cortisol affect our heart. The stress and the cortisol affect our midsection roundness, right? And so, if you want to lose weight, if you want to make better
You need to go
decisions,
sleep.
sleep. Sleep 7 hours.
I believe in synchronicity, and even with illness, and my granddaughters, they brought home a bug. Some noro thing is going around, and
Oh
they
yeah.
brought it home, and it knocked me out for 3 days, and I literally slept 3 days.
Hmm.
I don't sleep, and for the up to yesterday, I was sleep. I just sleep, wake up, do something, go back to sleep. I was just sleeping nonstop, and um, you're right. So Doreen says she loved what you just said. Keep stepping. Don't look at the broader agenda when things go wrong. One step at a time. So we're having some consent with your theory there. So what about real life applications of this mental and emotional resilience? It what can you give us some examples? I mean, you have already, but how does when we are able to apply this resilience, mental toughness, I'm going to say, to our life, how does that show up?
So how mental toughness shows up is the perpetual ability to reframe things in a way where your future self is going to thank you for it. And so when I think about You know, there was a, I wrote about in my book about
Tell us the name of the book, please, ma'am.
the future of sacred yoga therapy.
Okay.
But I wrote, and it's on Amazon. But I wrote about my experience first deploying to Iraq, and this was a long time ago, 20 years ago. And I just had a simple yoga practice, but when we were deployed, my soldiers wanted to have to be connected to that. They wanted to have a yoga practice, and so we did it on the base in the middle of nowhere. And when we lost somebody that was close to us, um, the memorial was held in the space that we had been practicing yoga that whole time, and it was profound because during our practice, we had learned physically how to be okay when things are uncomfortable, how to be okay when things don't feel okay, when we feel like we want to give up. In doing a physical practice, we learned how to breathe, to watch, to feel, and to allow. And so by doing those things, we had trained our bodies and our nervous systems to breathe, to feel, to watch, and allow things to happen. And so what ended up happening is when we lost, our first sergeant, that we were able to be present, to understand the impact of that, of the work that we had been doing beforehand, and to allow that to be kind of that reservoir that we could reach back um, to breathe, feel, watch, and allow our emotions as we were losing somebody that we really cared about.
That's so, oh, I got goosebumps as you were telling that because, anyway. So it allows you, having that resilience, it allows you to be stronger, actually. Some people might feel it's weakness, but it really isn't. It's strength.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning?
Yes.
Right. So in that story, for those who are unfamiliar with it, it's about a psychologist who was in the Holocaust. He was in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
And what he saw when people were at their worst, right? When the guards were at their worst and the people were starving and they were, seeing people disappear, losing so many people that they loved, like the ways that people showed care for each other despite the horrific conditions was really a key component to finding that search for meaning, as well as finding that resilience, that ability to be strong and endure something that nobody should have to endure, but they did. And so, in that same vein, when we can allow ourselves to have kindness and connection to ourselves, we can have that search for meaning. We can make meaning out of something. We can continue to endure and thrive, right? Allowing the energy. We have, a million, billion cellular interactions happening in our bodies at any given moment, right? And so, allowing all of that energy that's happening in our bodies to be the driving force, to be the thing that compels us to do the next step is such a beautiful thing.
I always like to bring things back to, and that is a great connection to what's happening on our platforms, stuff that we hear on a daily and so forth. And one of the big issues and conversations on our platform has to do with women in relationship today, in marriages, don't want to be there, rethinking this whole marriage thing and so forth. And one of the big examples that came up this week, at least for me, was about I reshared a video where a woman was telling the story of another woman who was in a marriage for how many years, and during those decades, the husband made it clear that he didn't want to be married to her, but he would stay married to her because they have children. And but basically, they were just roommates. He slept in the basement when his children went to bed and stay on his computer. God knows what he was doing. And then 15 years into this, he was diagnosed with cancer, and she became his primary caregiver. And so for another how many years, she was the one going to the appointments, blah, blah, blah. She didn't really want to, but she felt she had no choice because he had no other family, no one else except her and the kids. And then eventually he died and he passed away and all of that. I bring this up in this context because of what you're saying about, or what we have been talking about, allowing yourself to feel and acceptance, and then moving on, and grace, and so forth. A lot of the comments that I had, including my own, is like, screw him. I wasn't going to be doing that. Am I ungracious? Am I
It's a very difficult situation, and it's one that really is that personal choice, right? We are seeing the situation from the outside. We're seeing it, from a retrospective, but we don't know what was happening with the wife at that moment, right? We have the retrospective of what was happening, but in that moment, there were decisions every day to stay. And you know it's a very personal decision, and I'm not going to judge somebody for that, but it's definitely a difficult situation.
does that take for you, whatever the circumstances, whether it's something as dire as that or whatever, let's just say even in a job, does it require us to have this kind of strength, emotional strength, mental strength, to go through tough situations like that allow you to stay in it, to endure it? Or is the greater strength in recognizing that this is too much for me? This is
I
because
wonder
as the
if
woman
it's.
said in the video, it took my soul.
Mhm.
Are we supposed to, I don't, maybe not supposed, but to give up our souls so that we can come across as being whatever?
I don't know what they're trying to be, right? The,
Mhm.
the the bottom line is that um, we owe it to ourselves to fulfill our life's purpose.
Okay. And you
I
think
don't
that
think
might
we.
have
I
been
don't
her
think we.
purpose?
I don't think that was her purpose necessarily.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
think that we're designed to come into the world to be martyrs. Um, some people, Jesus on the cross, right? So like there's some people, but that's not generally the design. Um, and so the morale, if somebody is in a situation where they feel like their soul is being drained by the situation, that's not a healthy situation to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can endure a lot of things, right? That's why Stockholm syndrome has been diagnosed as a thing, right? It's because
Mm-hmm.
humans can do a lot of mental gymnastics to stay in situations that maybe they shouldn't be in. Um, and I think that what may have kept her there, or what things we might think about when thinking about a situation as difficult as that one, is what stories was she telling herself about that situation, right? What did she tell herself that she was going to be a bad person or a bad wife if she left him, right? Is she telling herself that, like, my morality, it will be in question if I stay in this, if I don't, if I stay in the situation which is harming me, right? Because nobody knows the backstory. Nobody knows that there's no love in this marriage,
Mm-hmm.
right? So but
I
what
just
the
want to tell you,
stories
I'm
this.
having a situation with my computer here. So if you see me looking weird, just keep talking.
Okay, I'll keep talking. um I think the bottom line is really what we tell ourselves matters. Our thoughts matters. Our thoughts are things. And so when we have whatever situations that we're in, we can have those situations be micro or macro, right? Those situation could be like, I live in this house with this man, or I, have the situation at work where this person said something, right? And so we have a thought about that, and we have to understand what our automatic negative thoughts are around these situations so that we can recognize it and recognize how that makes us feel and what actions we do or don't do because of those thoughts and feelings. And we
Mhm.
can see what the results are. And that's when the magic happens, when we start breaking things down and really like looking at circumstances as neutral as possible and associating, like figuring out what our automatic thoughts are and then knowing what those feelings are. Those thoughts and feelings, that's the core of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So when we have thoughts and feelings, I mean, that directs everything. And so, if we can understand what our automatic systems are doing, we can look at it and make a decision about what we want our deliberate situations to be. And so, that's the key is when we're thinking about changing, when we're thinking about becoming more resilient, when we're thinking about overcoming situations that feel very, very difficult. Um, the process of starting to examine our thoughts is a big part of it. But I would say that there's also other components to it, right? When I was struggling as a very young PA in a rural area in Korea, I ended up uh, going from feeling burnt out uh, from the process of medical education, which is very difficult, and then moving on to, um, being in an austere environment, being responsible for a lot of people, and feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the process. And I went from that to finding a deeply therapeutic yoga practice with a community that helped me to go from feeling like a zero to feeling like a hero, where not only did I take command of a company of like 100 people, both Korean and American, I earned this badge that like 12% of the Army can get. And ran 2 marathons in 2 weeks. Like I went from being like so depleted to being full. And there are some components that helped me to get to be more full. And group practice was one of them, like having the ability, like we did on Wednesday, to work with other people and be in our bodies and practice together. And then the other piece was individual talk sessions. I had a talk session with my mentor every single week to help me integrate like the lessons I was learning in my body with yoga, and then taking that a step further with, massage and talk therapy. And then having like those home routines where there were things that I would do at home that helped me to feel like my nervous system was more regulated. So all of those things helped me. Just being in that community helped me to be the type of person who could be okay when things are not okay. And
Mhm.
welcome back.
So, welcome back. Thank you. My camera just decided that it was done. It was done, and so thank you for doing that. I just want to acknowledge as Alicia. She says that in response to what I was saying, if it compromises your soul, it's too much in any context. And Doreen was sharing with us that she was multitasking, and she's asking, is that quasi yoga when you are deep breathing and stretching while doing something else, watching and listening?
Yeah, it is. Quasi yoga, no, it is yoga, right? So I alluded to before, there are 8 limbs of yoga, and asana, what you do at a gym or at a yoga studio, is just one of the 8 limbs, right? Breath work is another of the 8 limbs, right? And so mindfulness is another one of those limbs. And there's 3 levels of mindfulness that are determined in the 8 limbs of yoga. So when you bring mindfulness, when you bring presence, when you bring awareness, breath, movement, mindful movement into your work, you're bringing yoga into your practice. You're bringing yoga into your daily life. So absolutely, Doreen, you're doing it. You're doing it.
All right. So as we approach our closing here, I just want us to just to emphasize, highlight some of the important. Right, everything is important, but discuss some of the the different roles that we as women play, whether it's as caregiver, husbands, wives, partners, professionals, how our ability to have that resilience mentally and emotionally will help us to go through the challenges that life will throw at us. So just as we are closing here, Adhana, can you guide our viewers how to shift from their mindset of fear and doubt, probably if that's what they're experiencing, to confidence and courage? And you mentioned yoga. What are some of the small daily habits that they can incorporate to help them with that and emotion regulation? And again, you said it in the beginning, gratitude. I've been doing some of my own, I always do, but lately I've been doing it more, own reflection, and it keeps coming up, be more grateful, be more grateful. So those three things: mindset shift, what are some of the small daily habits we can incorporate, including yoga, and gratitude? How can those three things help us to build our emotional and mental resilience as we wrap up here?
Yeah, well, there's a way to do a mindset shift. There are structures to do it, right? And so my model that I use is based on like Brooke Castillo's teachings, and it really is like, looking at a circumstance, and then looking at the thoughts and feelings associated with that circumstance, looking at the actions that you take when you think and feel a certain way, and looking at the results. And so having that as a structured practice for looking at what's happening in your life can be a way to uncover, what's happening in the mind, because 99% of today's thoughts were yesterday's thoughts, and most of them are crap. So, like, how can we direct them in a way that makes a lot more sense and really does help us to grow into what we want to do? Using the self-coaching model is one way to shift the mindset. And then, yes, the yoga and the breath work. I mean, these are all the ways that I work with people, either one-on-one or in small groups. We actually have an open house for the Rise and Shine Club coming up next Wednesday. So, we'll have a couple of more Wednesdays where people can drop in and understand what the process is to be more connected.
Would you email me a link so
Yes,
that I
ma'am.
can post it on our page so that whoever is watching this and might be interested can join you?
Absolutely.
And guys, remember, you can join her school. I think that's spelled SKOOL
Right.
community. And it's called Release the Rise, and be part of the movement.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
cut into you.
Yeah, but having a self-coaching model, having a yoga or a mindfulness practice, some way where you're moving your body, and really understanding that, some of the pillars of health that we talk about, and even in the Army, even though I'm not officially representing the Army, but we talk about physical health, we talk about nutrition, we talk about sleep, we talk about mental health and spiritual health. And so much of
You
that
talk
is,
about spiritual health in the Army?
we do, ma'am, we do.
Okay.
And it's important to have that community connection. So spiritual health can happen because we're connected to a higher power, or we're connected to a collective, right? It shows up for different people in different ways. But having those connections are the things that are the foundation for the good life, like the La Dolce Vita, right? So how can we have that good life? We got to sleep. Okay, maybe that you don't have to do as much sleep, but everyone else has to sleep. We have to sleep. We have to eat well. We have to, and so, but how do we make it so that it's not a to-do list, but an invitation? And so when we're thinking about how we go from having things be a to-do list to being an invitation, then we have to offer, we usually approach that with curiosity. Like, what would it be like to, how could I possibly eat more protein, right? I'm in midlife, I'm perimenopausal. How can I eat more protein? Well, I can do yogurt, I can do nuts, I can do lentils, I can do like allow ourselves to daydream about some things. And sometimes it feels like there's never any time to daydream about anything.
Is that
But
why your locks is so beautiful? I'm going to get mine done when I leave here. Is that why your locks is so beautiful?
I had an artist do my locks, so that's why they're so beautiful.
Oh, an artist.
Yeah, cut by James. Look him up on Instagram. He's amazing.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
I'm actually going to see my loctician when I leave here now, and I'm going to show her I'm going to show her this and tell her. Okay. So next time you see me and if my locks is looking like yours, you know why.
Awesome. But yeah, so allowing ourselves to be curious and to, if we're thinking about changing something in our life, let it be over the course of the long view, right? All the change doesn't need to happen today or tomorrow or even this week, right? But we can allow ourselves to take those small, deliberate steps to shift things just enough that it feels like a natural inclination, like it feels like a natural next step for us to, buy a high protein yogurt and eat that in the mornings instead of something else, instead of a pastry, right? Replacing one habit for another, one habit for a healthier habit until that habit is a habit. And then you can take the next thing and make that more of a habit, make bedtime a habit, and the things you do before bedtime a habit. So there's so many different ways that we can take small steps, because the only way for us to get there is the small steps, not the big ones.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us this Saturday mornings, bright and early, to have this conversation. I've learned a lot. And yes, yoga might not be my thing, but I did participate, watch, and could see, I am starting the stretch thing that you did. I'm not going to put my foot over on my neck and all of that.
No, we don't do that. We don't do that. It's like I said at the beginning of class, let the position be easy and comfortable. That's how we do yoga.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'll give the stretches a try and take it from there. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, Adhana. Adhana is a scholar, a certified yoga therapist. Please hold up the book again, certified life coach and army physician assistant, as well as an author. Her book, The Future of Sacred Yoga Therapy, is available on Amazon. Please go have a look. I'm sure it's not just about yoga and how high your feet can go. I know it's deeper than that. You heard the lady, you know it's deeper than that. You can also join her on her school, SKOOL community. Look it up online, and it's called Release to Rise. And she will be sending me a link that I can, for the next how many weeks, you can drop into one of her sessions.
For the next couple of weeks, but if you join school, you'll have all the details about when the community opens and closes. We'll have
Okay. So
but for the next 2 weeks, we have open houses.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. I am going to show your picture now to my loctician. I have an appointment in 30 minutes, and next time we'll be twins.
Awesome. Love it.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you. There are some of your fans here. I want to acknowledge everyone. Alicia, there are people who didn't say anything. Virgie Patterson, Alicia Bell, Doreen, and there's Colleen, and my childhood friend, Grace Butterfield, was watching as well. Those are the people who I could see. Thank you again for being with me, and have yourself a wonderful rest of the weekend with your beautiful babies.
Thank you.
How old is the other one? You said one is 7.
Oh, 7, and then the other one is an adult. So.
Okay. Big people team.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everybody, and catch you tomorrow morning. Catch Colleen tomorrow morning for Lift and Carry, when she will actually be talking about the feminine and masculine energies. So be sure, thank you, Doreen, be sure to join us for that tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a good day and talk to you soon. Bye-bye, Adhana.